Okay, so I am Fenton. I am the Natural Flood Management Project Officer of the Council, Calderdale Council. And we don't have a SuDS officer, unfortunately. So I am involved in any SuDS work that happens in Calderdale. They bring me in, which is good. A lot of my background has been in the third sector, and so I can when we slow the flow, I have a good understanding and a lot of support for slow the flow because I've worked a lot with my jobs. I've been in charities, organisations such as Slow the Flow, and a lot of the things I'm going to talk about today were kind of focused on when I worked in a previous role, how I could bring examples of what they've done elsewhere, in this case in Portland, Oregon, and Seattle, and utilise them in the UK from a charity's point of view, really. So hopefully there's some inspiring ideas for you there. So, firstly, what I'm talking about tonight, I'm going to talk about Calderdale's stance on SuDS at the moment and where we're up to. And I'm going to touch on my trip to Portland, Oregon and Seattle, and what I learned there, and then how you guys can perhaps use some of the ideas from those places here, and then also I'm going to touch on the NFM grant scheme that I run, all a bit disjointed, but hopefully it will seamlessly flow together. Okay, so Calderdale Council really want to see all new developments having long-term effective, and you really SuDS at last. I was in London last week and there's a lot of SuDS there now, which is great. When I worked in London about 5 years ago, there was SuDS were just starting, but it seems like there's a hell of a lot more now on the streets and that. But not all of them are as effective as they need to be. Sometimes you just think that maybe they just put them in there because it's kind of fashionable, but they haven't thought about where the water's coming from, perhaps. So what we want is really long-term, well-thought-out SuDS, like some of the stuff we've seen on Roger's previous presentation, in all new developments. And currently, this is a problem nationally. New developments have to put in SuDS, if practical. And if practical means, if it's no more expensive than a traditional drainage system, which is crazy, because developers probably say that, yeah, it's going to be a lot more expensive to do that, or the maintenance is going to be a lot more expensive. So the planning team will be like, oh right, okay then you won't have to do it then, that's okay. We need it to be, all new developments have to use SuDS, and that's what we want. Because we are, in Calderdale, as you know, the topography is very different to Sheffield, to many places where SuDS have been used. We've got very steep valleys, and we've got a lack of space on the ground, so it's easy for developers to get out of putting SuDS in. As for Calderdale Council-led SuDS projects, I'm very glad to say there are several in development. We're very behind Sheffield, and that is, there's a number of reasons for that, which I'll come on to in the next slide. But there are several coming up, and I'm just working on a few with some of my colleagues, and also just a picture of the new Halifax bus station, which is not led by the council, it's led by the combined authority. They're going to be putting in a green roof on top of the bus station, which is very exciting, and a big attenuation tank as well, which could be seen as SuDS. Some people say it is. So I touched on number one. Developers only have to put them in if practical, and that needs to be. That's a bit of a problem in Calderdale where they can easily get out of that. One of the big problems for, as Roger touched on, one of the biggest problems for the council is who's going to be responsible for these SuDS. And I'll touch on an idea later on in the presentation, how we can tackle that in some cases, and where the money comes from for the maintenance long term as well. I think we need my highways team to take a trip to Sheffield and meet Roger's team and learn some lessons from those guys. And number 3 is education. There's a big lack of education in the council, I think, in terms of what SuDS are and if they can be done. Because many people think that we can't do them, and who's going to pay for the maintenance? But they, like Roger said, they're going to be less maintenance than a traditional drainage system, potentially. So I went to Portland, Oregon and Seattle in 2015 to research sustainable drainage for a previous role. And I don't know if you're aware, I guess Portland is the example of sustainable drainage. They've been doing it for many, many years, and there's literally hundreds of these green streets, as they call them, on the sides of roads all over the city. There are a range of, as you can see, they're not as beautiful as the ones that Roger showed us a minute ago. But there's thousands of them. There's so many. I wish I had a number of how many there were. You turn the street, there's more there. All the buildings have got some element of SuDS on them, and it's absolutely everywhere. And the public are really behind them as well. They really appreciate them. So I went to learn from the lessons learned from Portland City Council and Seattle as well, and also how people like SoFlow, community groups and charities can take it forward on their own, really, and they can take community action. So yeah, like I said, there was so many SuDS on every street corner, and some of the benefits they reported, we've touched on them already, but a couple of ones we haven't touched on are things like enhances neighbourhood livability. So people's houses' prices went up if there was a green street in the vicinity of their house, like having a Waitrose almost. It added value to your house, and obviously it's nicer than having a car parked outside your house, having a beautiful planting. Yeah, all these benefits we've touched on already, and you probably already know them. But yeah, saves money on wastewater pumping and treatment costs, so it can be cheaper in the long run for the councils to apply. So I want to talk about this oh, paradise. I want to talk about ways that you guys and community groups could get involved. So this is an organisation, they're a first sector organisation called DPAVE, and they do exactly what they sound like they do. They go around doing volunteer events around Portland, and they basically just haul out all the hard surfaces and plant up with some beautiful, and they've been hugely successful. They've got loads of sponsorship. I know Calderdale is very different to the vast city of Portland, which is pretty flat and there's tons of concrete to deal with. But it is an option for something we could look at doing in future. Another way that the community have got involved over there is with the downpipe disconnection program. This isn't likely to be suitable in all cases in Calderdale. It may aggravate flooding in some cases, which we do not want to do. But over there, for example, they were given £50 per household if they disconnected their house from the main system. $50, sorry. So, lots of people did it, but then a charity also went around doing it for people, claiming the $50 with their permission, obviously. And I think, how many did it say? 56,000 households were connected, which made a massive difference. Another way that Amanda and Roger have both touched on was these raised planters, or rain planters I call them. And this is one I built in Enfield. Also utilising interpretation so people can understand what it is, hopefully. And they're just simple design. And the cost of one of these is a few £100. And if I can build it using my rudimentary DIY skills, then you guys can too. It's an IBC container, which you probably will have seen. It's a caged 1,000-litre tank, which I bought off eBay for £30. There's another one in the background as well, as you can see. So those, I know SuDS have done some of these already. They're a bit more technical than these ones in terms of design, as in exterior. They look very posh compared to these, basically. But yeah, these are very easy to do and can easily be implemented. One of the projects was to make these in schools around Enfield in London. So we did about 12 different schools. We did a number of these, which is a nice project. And then the school was provided with educational resources to talk about them and look after them as well going forward. The kids planted the plants in them as well. So I touched on before ways that Portland, Oregon have got around the maintenance issue. And they've formed a Green Street Stewards program where you can volunteer to adopt a green street, a roadside planter, a roadside SuDS, and you just do a minimal amount of work. You go every couple of weeks. You take out any litter, you take out any weeds or any dead vegetation, and report any problems. And this could be a way of reducing costs of maintenance going forward, and also increasing the communities getting behind these things, really. And it's been a very successful scheme, and I hope that we can potentially do it here in Calderdale when the time comes. This isn't necessarily related to SuDS, but it's just a way of raising awareness of the river. These are small markers. You won't be able to read that, but it says rainwater only, it drains to the river. And it's just a way, it's been done elsewhere in the UK. That's me with hair, more hair on the right. I'm covering up my hair, what a shame. In fact, on the drain behind us, that's a volunteer on the left. On the drain behind us, you can see someone's poured paint in there, so that's the kind of stuff that these things were supposed to be stopping. But yeah, I've included it in here because it's big in Portland, and we took the idea back to do it in the UK as well. Just to raise awareness of the river and get people talking about it, really. And that's mostly regarding pollution, but I thought I'd include it in this case. So, segueing seamlessly into the Natural Field Management Landowner Grant Scheme. Now, this has been included because it's open to people who want to put in SuDS as well. So, if you're a landowner, you can apply to the grant scheme, which is currently open, and you can, there's leaflets at the back on the table as well, so you don't have to write down that ridiculous webpage. If you want to install some kind of SuDS or some kind of natural flood management on your land, you can apply to this scheme for a chunk of money. And it's open until the 3rd of October 2022. And we will store your application, and then hopefully you'll be funded to do that work going forwards. So far we've done about 40 projects, and they've all been rural natural flood management schemes. So the kind of things we've funded are tree planting, leaky dams, which slow the flood volunteers will be very knowledgeable of, woodland management, which is really important for increasing the surface roughness, the plants on the slopes to reduce water flowing overland, and attenuation basins as well, which you're probably familiar with as well. But no one has as yet applied for a sustainable drainage project, and there's no reason why not. Those things can't be funded as well. So we are hoping for several such applications this time round. And if anyone else has land they may wish to do anything of this manner on, please do get in touch. We can have a talk. The scheme also funds design of these schemes, not just the work, but the design of the scheme as well. Interpretation, hopefully something more exciting than design, and maintenance going forwards as well. So this is the photos. Another example. Roger mentioned using sculpture and things like that to raise awareness of sustainable drainage projects. This is another example of a way that's been done. This is in Portland, Oregon, and it's coming up a green roof into a rain garden. I think it's on the Youth Hostel in Portland. So that's it for me. I just want to thank the Winston Churchill Memorial Trust. They funded my trip over there, and if you've not heard of it, they'll fund similar trips for anyone interested. My friend is going over to Japan, for example, to research dry stone walling. So anything that you do. So he's a dry stone waller, by the way. So anything that you do, the Winston Churchill Memorial Trust can fund you to do research on that in a different country, or in this country. So very worthwhile looking at that if you're interested in that. So they funded my trip over there and all my research. And so I've included my email, and do get in touch if you want any more information on the grant scheme and anything else. Thank you very much.